MonsterBuild. The Three Gorges Dam, 2,335 meters long, 185 meters tall, 22,500 megawatts of installed generating capacity, making it the largest power station ever built anywhere on Earth. And to create it, China made decisions that affected over 1 million people, reshaped a river that had defined Chinese civilization for thousands of years, and physically altered the rotation of the planet. This is the full story. The Yangtze River is the third longest river in the world. It runs 4,000 kilometers from the Tibetan Plateau to the East China Sea, draining a basin that is home to 400 million people. For most of recorded Chinese history, the Yangtze flooded catastrophically. In 1931, floods on the Yangtze killed an estimated 370,000 people. In 1954, 1.5 million people were left homeless. In 1998, floods killed more than 4,000. The river was an existential threat to the people living along it, and China had been debating how to tame it since the early 20th century. The Three Gorges Dam was first proposed by Sun Yat-sen in 1919. Mao Zedong wrote a poem about it in 1956. Construction was formally approved by the National People's Congress in 1992, but narrowly. 1/3 of the delegates voted against it or abstained, which was an extraordinary level of opposition for a major state project in China. The concerns were real: the cost, the displacement, the environmental impact, and the risk. If the dam ever failed, the flooding it would release downstream would be catastrophic. Construction began in 1994. The first task was the same as it had been for the Hoover Dam 60 years earlier: move the river. Workers built 2 cofferdams to divert the Yangtze around the construction site. Then they excavated the riverbed down to solid granite bedrock. The foundation for a structure of this size had to be absolute. Any weakness in the rock below would eventually propagate upward through millions of tons of concrete under constant hydraulic pressure. The concrete pour was on a scale that had never been attempted before. The dam required 27 million cubic meters of concrete, more than 8 times the amount used in the Hoover Dam. They poured it in sections, using cooling pipes embedded in the concrete similar to the Hoover Dam technique, but at a far larger scale. At peak construction, over 40,000 workers were on site simultaneously. The project ran 24 hours a day, every day for over a decade. The displacement program was one of the largest in human history. 1.3 million people had to leave their homes, their farms, their ancestral land. 13 cities were submerged, 140 towns, 1,350 villages. The water rose slowly but permanently. By the time the reservoir reached full capacity, entire communities that families had lived in for generations were at the bottom of a lake 600 kilometers long. Residents were relocated to new towns built on the hillsides above the waterline, but many found the new land less fertile and the compensation inadequate. The archaeological loss was irreplaceable. The Three Gorges region had been inhabited continuously for hundreds of thousands of years. Over 1,300 known archaeological sites were submerged, including temples, ancient towns, and artifacts dating back to the Paleolithic. Chinese archaeologists worked frantically in the years before the flooding to excavate what they could, but the scope was impossible to fully address. Some sites were partially dismantled and reassembled above the waterline. Most were simply lost. The dam has 32 main turbines. Each one generates 710 megawatts, more than most entire power plants. Together they produce around 100 terawatt-hours of electricity per year, supplying power to hundreds of millions of people across central and eastern China. The electricity it generates replaces the equivalent of burning 50 million tons of coal annually. The reduction in carbon emissions from the dam is one of the most significant contributions to clean energy in the world, which was a central argument used to justify its construction. The rotational effect is real. When the reservoir filled to capacity, it held approximately 42 trillion liters of water at an average elevation of about 175 meters above sea level. Moving that mass from low elevation river water to a high elevation reservoir redistributed weight across the Earth's surface. The effect is the same as a spinning figure skater extending their arms. It slows the rotation. Scientists calculated the effect at approximately 0.06 of a microsecond per day. Earth's axis also shifted by about 2 centimeters. A human construction project moved the planet. The dam controls flooding on a river that killed hundreds of thousands of people in living memory. It has already prevented several major flood events that hydrologists believe would have caused significant casualties. The reservoir stores floodwater during peak season and releases it in controlled amounts. The Yangtze Valley downstream, home to hundreds of millions of people, is measurably safer than it was before 1994. The Three Gorges Dam remains one of the most debated infrastructure projects in history. The people who lost their homes have never fully accepted the compensation they received. The environmental effects on the Yangtze ecosystem, including the extinction of the Yangtze River dolphin and the decline of numerous fish species, are ongoing. The sediment that once replenished the river delta is now trapped behind the dam, causing coastal erosion downstream. None of these costs were fully anticipated, but the electricity is real, the flood control is real, and the scale of what China built in 12 years is genuinely without precedent. Follow MonsterBuild, the biggest builds on Earth, explained. Link in bio.